Part 1. Red Dust, New Ledger. The stagecoach wheezed to a stop like a dying mule, and June Hart stepped down into the furnace that was Dry Gulch, Arizona territory. Red dust swirled up to greet her, coating her traveling dress before her boots even touched the ground. The driver tossed her carpetbag down with all the care of a man handling kindling. "Welcome to the edge of nowhere, miss." He spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Last stop for hell itself." June retrieved her bag, straightened her spine, and surveyed the town that would be her fresh start. False-fronted buildings lined the main street like crooked teeth, their sun-bleached signs barely readable. The adobe courthouse squatted at the far end, listing slightly to the left as if the very earth rejected its authority. Wheeler's general store stood directly across from where the stage had deposited her. Through the wavering heat, she could make out figures moving inside. Her letter of introduction crinkled in her pocket, a temporary bookkeeping position. But it was honest work. After Missouri, honest was all she wanted. The bell above Wheeler's door announced her arrival to a store crammed with everything from flour sacks to horse liniment. Behind the counter, a thin man with pomaded hair looked up from his ledger. "Mr. Wheeler, I'm June Hart. You were expecting me." His eyes traveled from her dust-covered hem to her determined face. "The bookkeeper from Missouri. Yes, though I must say, I expected someone more mature. Numbers don't care about age. Mr. Wheeler, just accuracy." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Fair enough. You can start immediately. The books are there." He gestured to a cluttered desk in the corner. "I warn you, they're in some disorder." Disorder was generous. June settled at the desk and opened the ledgers to find a tangle of entries that would make a saint curse. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work, losing herself in the familiar comfort of columns and calculations. An hour in, she frowned. The pattern emerging from the chaos wasn't just poor bookkeeping, it was systematic overcharging. Administrative fees appeared like mushrooms after rain, always in the same amounts, always with duplicate receipt numbers. "Mr. Wheeler," she called, keeping her voice neutral. "These administrative fees." "Courthouse fees," he said quickly. "Judge Crow instituted them 6 months back, for the railroad survey." The same fee appears 3 times for the Johnson Ranch, with identical receipt numbers. Wheeler's face went pale beneath his pomade. That must be an error." "Several errors, all favoring the courthouse coffers." June pulled out her pencil and began marking the discrepancies. "You'll want to correct these before the territorial auditor arrives." The bell jangled again, and June looked up to see a man filling the doorway, tall and weathered as old leather, with eyes the color of winter sky. Dust covered his work clothes, but he moved with the controlled grace of a man who knew his own strength. "Cole McRae," Wheeler stammered. "Your feed order." "Should be $40 even," the man said, his voice low and measured. "Not 48 with your new fees." June glanced at the ledger. "He's right. The base price is 40. The $8 administrative fee has already been paid this month." She showed Wheeler the entry. "Here, receipt number 347. Cole McRae's gaze shifted to her, taking in the ledgers, the pencil marks, the determined set of her jaw. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit who wouldn't be pushed around. "Ma'am," he touched his hat brim. "Miss Hart, the new bookkeeper." Then Wheeler's luck just improved. He turned back to the proprietor. $40. Wheeler swallowed hard. "Yes, of course, my mistake." As Cole loaded his supplies, June returned to the ledgers, but her concentration was broken. She felt his presence like heat from a stove, steady and warming. When he left, the store seemed smaller somehow. The afternoon brought a commotion. Judge Barrett Crow himself swept into town with his entourage, a lawyer named Ephraim Pike, and a cluster of hard-faced men wearing matched spurs. They gathered a crowd outside the courthouse. June joined the townspeople, keeping to the edges. Crow was a heavy man with silver temples and the bearing of a battlefield general. His voice boomed across the square. Citizens of Dry Gulch Progress demand sacrifice. The Southern Pacific Railroad will bring prosperity. But first, we must prepare the way by territorial authority. I hereby announce the temporary requisition of certain properties for survey and development. He unrolled a document. June's stomach tightened as he read the list. The Miller Place, the Valdez Homestead, and there Riverbend Ranch. Cole McRae. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. June saw Cole standing near the water trough, his face carved from stone. The woman beside him, Mexican, with a doctor's bag, put a restraining hand on his arm.
"This is legal theft,"
someone shouted. Crow's men shifted hands to pistols. The judge smiled like a snake. "This is law, Mr. Hutchins. Anyone who impedes lawful process will face consequences." The crowd dispersed slowly, anger simmering beneath the surface. June started back to Wheeler's, but a smooth voice stopped her. "Miss Hart." Ephraim Pike stood behind her, immaculate despite the heat. His smile never reached his eyes. "I understand you're new to our town, a bookkeeper of some reputation in Missouri, though there was that unfortunate misunderstanding about missing funds." Ice formed in June's chest. Charges that were dropped. "Of course. Mistakes happen. Speaking of which, I noticed you found some discrepancies in Wheeler's books today. Mathematical errors, now corrected." Pike stepped closer, bringing the scent of bay rum and something darker. "A word of advice. Miss Hart, Dry Gulch operates on trust. It would be unfortunate if someone's past made that trust difficult to maintain." "Is that a threat, Mr. Pike?" "Merely an observation. I could help. You know, ensure your fresh start remains fresh. All I ask is that you remember, numbers can be interpreted many ways." June met his gaze steadily. "In my experience, Mr. Pike, numbers tell only one story, the truth." His smile tightened. "How refreshingly naive. Good day, Miss Hart." That evening, June took a room at Sister Agnes's boarding house. The nun was a practical woman with sharp eyes and calloused hands. "You stood up to Pike today," Sister Agnes said, serving beans and cornbread. "That was either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both." June pushed beans around her plate. "This requisition order, is it legal?" "Legal as a judge's signature makes it, just as those administrative fees are legal, just as the water rights mysteriously shifting to town trustees is legal." Sister Agnes's mouth twisted. "Law and justice parted ways in Dry Gulch the day Barrett Crow arrived." Later, June sat at her window watching the stars. Below, she could see men on horseback, Crow's coyote spurs. Someone had called them circling the town like predators. A knock at her door made her jump. "Package for you, miss," Sister Agnes said, handing her a wrapped bundle. Inside was a ledger, new, bound in good leather, with a note, "For keeping honest accounts, C.M." June traced the initials, remembering winter sky eyes and quiet strength. Tomorrow, Crow would file his requisition orders. The coyote spurs would enforce them. Pike would pressure and threaten. But tonight, she had a new ledger and a sudden certainty that she wasn't alone in this fight. She lit her lamp and began transcribing Wheeler's corrected numbers. If war was coming to Dry Gulch, her weapons would be truth and arithmetic, in her experience, properly wielded. They could be more powerful than any gun. Outside, dust devils danced down Main Street, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, or perhaps it was just a man with spurs, marking his territory. June bent to her work, the scratch of her pen the only sound in the desert night. Tomorrow would bring heat and conflict, but for now, she had numbers to set right. It was a small thing, perhaps, but June Hart had learned that small things, accumulated like interest, could topple empires. The lamp burned steady as she worked, a small light against the darkness, while all around Dry Gulch, larger shadows gathered. Part 2. River Bend Bones and Wells. The wagon ride to River Bend Ranch took June through landscape that looked like God's own accounting ledger, everything balanced between life and death, red and brown, sky and earth. Cole McRae handled the reins with the same quiet competence she'd noticed in the store, while Jonah Reed rode alongside, rifle across his saddle. "Appreciate you coming out," Cole said, eyes on the horizon. "Most folks would have steered clear after yesterday's show. I've found trouble has a way of finding you whether you steer clear or not." June adjusted her hat against the morning sun. "Better to face it with good records." Jonah chuckled, a deep rumble. "Ma'am, you sure you're a bookkeeper and not a philosopher?" "In my experience, Mr. Reed, they're often the same thing." River Bend revealed itself slowly, first the windmill turning lazy in the breeze, then the adobe ranch house squatting solid against the landscape. Finally, the corrals and outbuildings arranged with military precision. Everything spoke of hard work and harder times, but also of order. This was a place where things were done right. Maria Valdez met them at the door, medical bag in hand. "The woman who makes numbers behave," she said, extending a work-roughened hand. "Cole says you found 3 months of theft in 1 hour." "Not theft," June corrected carefully. "Systematic errors requiring correction." "Ah," Maria's smile was knowing. "Come, I'll show you where we keep our own errors." The ranch office was a converted bedroom, papers stacked on every surface. June had seen worse, but not recently. She rolled up her sleeves while Cole lingered in the doorway. "I know it's a mess," he began. "It's information waiting to be organized," June said, already sorting papers into piles. "When was the last time you reconciled with the bank?" "My father did the books after he died last year." Cole's jaw tightened. "I've kept receipts." "That's all I need." June pulled out the new ledger he'd sent. "Mr. Reed, I'll need you too. You handle the cattle sales." "Yes, ma'am." "Then you're my primary source for livestock transactions. Maria, medical supplies and household expenses. And I remember every peso spent." They worked through the morning, June reconstructing 3 years of ranch operations from scattered papers and memories. Slowly, a picture emerged, and it wasn't pretty. The administrative fees hitting River Bend were triple what other ranches paid. Water rights fees had increased 400% in 6 months. And the receipt numbers. "Look at this." June spread papers across the table. Receipt 347 appears on 5 different transactions, all different dates. Receipt 512 shows up 8 times. Either Judge Crow's clerk can't count, or they're bleeding us slow. Cole finished. "Death by 1,000 fees. Sister Agnes arrived at noon with a basket and something more valuable, an old map wrapped in oilcloth. This belonged to Maria's late husband," she said, unrolling it carefully. "Miguel was a surveyor before he took up medicine. He mapped this whole valley in 78. June studied the careful notations. "These markings here, under River Bend." "Aquifer," Maria said softly. "Miguel always said this land sat on an underground river, and these symbols." She traced a finger along the eastern boundary. "Coal, not much, but enough for railroad interest." The room went quiet. June felt pieces clicking together like tumblers in a lock. Water and coal, 2 things a railroad needs most. And 2 things that make land valuable beyond its surface price, Cole said grimly. "Which explains the fees." June continued, her mind racing. "Bleed the ranches financially, force them into foreclosure or abandonment, then acquire the mineral and water rights separately. It's elegant, in a criminal sort of way." "Can you prove it?" Jonah asked. June looked at the spread of papers. the patterns emerging like constellations. Give me 3 days and access to town records. I'll prove it mathematically. That afternoon, they strategized. Cole wanted to confront Crow directly, but June counseled patience. He'll call a preliminary hearing before the formal requisition. Territory law requires it. That's our chance to present counter-evidence. You're talking about fighting paper with paper, Jonah said skeptically. I'm talking about using their own weapons against them. Every fee collected generated a record. Every record tells a story. We just need to make sure everyone hears the right story. As sun painted the ranch house gold, June realized she'd been there all day without thinking about Missouri once. These people, Cole with his quiet strength, Maria with her sharp wisdom, Jonah with his steady humor, they'd accepted her without question, trusted her with their futures. I should head back to town, June said, gathering papers. Sister Agnes will wonder. After dark, with coyote spurs prowling, Cole shook his head. You'll stay here tonight. Maria's got the spare room ready. June wanted to protest. Propriety demanded it. But the look in his eyes stopped her. Not impropriety protection. These people took care of their own. And somehow, in one day, she'd become that. Dinner was simple beef and beans, cornbread and preserves. But the conversation flowed rich as cream. Jonah told stories of driving cattle up from Texas. Maria shared Mexican remedies that predated modern medicine. Cole spoke sparingly but with dry humor that caught June off guard. First time I met Jonah, Cole said, passing the cornbread. He was facing down 3 men over a card game in Tucson. I figured anyone that calm looking at those odds was either very good or very stupid. What did you decide? June asked. Still working on it. Cole deadpanned, dodging Jonah's mock punch. After dinner, June spread her work across the kitchen table, transcribing findings by lamplight. Cole joined her, studying the numbers she'd uncovered. This pattern here. She pointed to a column. See how the fees spike exactly 30 days before each ranch faces loan payments. Someone knows when you're most vulnerable. Inside information, Cole said, from the bank, or someone with access to bank records. June made another note. Mr. McRae. Cole. She looked up, met his eyes. Cole, this preliminary hearing, Crow, will have all the advantages. Legal authority, armed men, intimidation. We'll have something better. What's that? The truth, and you to tell it. Heat that had nothing to do with the lamp flame spread through her chest. She turned back to the ledgers, but concentration scattered like startled quail. When had this man's faith become something she craved? Later, Maria showed her to the spare room clean and sparse, with a cross on the wall and lavender hanging from the rafters. My Miguel used to say the desert teaches patience, Maria said, turning down the covers. But also, when the flash flood comes, you must be ready to move fast. You think the flood is coming? I think you are the flood. June Hart and men like Crow, they build their houses on sand. Alone, June sat by the window brushing her hair, looking out at the desert night, below. She could see Cole making his rounds, checking gates and horses with the methodical care of a man who'd learned not to leave anything to chance. The sight of him, steady and sure in the darkness, made her chest tight with something she didn't care to name. A sound made her freeze horses, moving fast. She grabbed her wrapper and crept to the hall. Cole and Jonah were already at the door, armed and ready. Just letting you know we're watching, came a voice from the darkness. Judge wants to make sure his property is well maintained. Still my property until a legal ruling says otherwise. Cole replied evenly. Laughter, ugly and sharp. Week from now, that'll change. Enjoy it while you can. McRae. The riders thundered off, leaving dust and threat hanging in the air. June found herself on the porch, Cole's hand steadying her elbow. Trying to spook us, he said. Are you spooked? He looked down at her, And for a moment, his control slipped. She saw fear there, not for himself, but for this place, these people, this life built from desert sand and stubborn will. I've been spooked since the day Crow rode in, but spooked doesn't mean beaten. June placed her hand over his on her elbow. No, it doesn't. They stood that way. Desert night wrapped around them like a secret, until propriety reasserted itself. And June stepped away. But something had shifted. Some boundary crossed in that moment of shared determination. Back in her room, June returned to her figures, but the numbers blurred. Tomorrow she'd return to town, dig deeper into the records, build an unassailable case. But tonight, she allowed herself to imagine victory not just over Crow, but something more. A place here, a purpose, maybe even a home. The windmill creaked its lullaby, and somewhere in the distance, actual coyotes howled wild and free, unaware of the human drama playing out beneath their stars. June fell asleep to that sound, ledgers scattered on her coverlet, dreaming of water running deep beneath the desert, waiting to be found. Part 3, Sunset Court, Paper Bullets. The courthouse at 4 in the afternoon was an oven with delusions of grandeur. June sat in the front row, ledgers stacked beside her like ammunition, watching the townsfolk file in. The air crackled with more than heat anticipation, anger, and the metallic taste of coming storm. Judge Barrett Crow entered like Caesar crossing the Rubicon, black robes billowing despite the still air. His coyote spurs flanked the doors, hands resting on pistol grips with practiced ease. Ephraim Pike followed, carrying enough papers to wallpaper a saloon. This preliminary hearing, Crow intoned, settling behind the bench like a toad on a lily pad, addresses the territorial requisition of properties for railroad development. We shall proceed with all due haste. Your Honor. June stood before he could continue. I request permission to present evidence regarding the fee structures underlying these requisitions. Crow's eyes narrowed. You are not an attorney, Miss Hart. No, sir, I'm a bookkeeper. And according to Territorial Statute 247, any party whose property faces requisition may call witnesses to speak to the financial standing of said property. Pike shot to his feet. This is highly irregular, but legal. Cole interrupted from behind June. I invoke that right for Riverbend Ranch. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Deputy Tom Harland, young and clearly uncomfortable, shifted his weight near the wall. June caught his eye, saw doubt there, maybe even sympathy. Very well, Crow said through gritted teeth. Proceed quickly. June opened her first ledger. If it please the court, I call Mr. Samuel Wheeler. Wheeler looked like he'd rather face a rattlesnake than walk to the witness chair. But he came. June kept her questions simple, methodical, letting the numbers tell their story. Mr. Wheeler, is this your signature on receipt 347? Yes. Dated March 15th, for $8 administrative fee from Riverbend Ranch. Yes. And this one, also receipt 347 dated April 2nd. Wheeler's Adam's apple bobbed. That appears to be an error. How many times does receipt 347 appear in your books? I'd have to check. I've checked 17 times, always for $8, always for administrative fees. June turned to the crowd. That's $136 collected on a single receipt number. The murmur grew louder. Crow gavelled for silence. June continued relentlessly, calling witness after witness, Mabel Quinn from the Dusty Rose Saloon, whose legendary memory for figures confirmed the pattern. Tom Henderson, whose ranch had paid the same fee 6 times in 1 month. Even Father Miguel from the Spanish Mission, who testified that church lands faced similar mysterious charges. With each testimony, the story built like a wall brick by numerical brick. The duplicate receipts, the escalating fees timed to loan payments, The systematic targeting of properties with water access or mineral potential? Coincidence, Pike finally exploded. Clerical errors. Strange how these errors always favor the courthouse treasury, June said calmly. And stranger still how they concentrate on properties now slated for requisition. She pulled out the final piece, a chart showing fee collections mapped against the requisition list. The correlation was damning. Properties facing seizure had paid, on average, 3 times more in fees than their neighbors. The facts suggest, June said, addressing the packed room more than Crow, that certain parties have been systematically draining targeted ranches of capital, making them appear financially unstable and thus eligible for requisition. That's a serious accusation. Crow warned. That's mathematics. Your Honor, numbers don't lie. The room erupted. Ranchers shouted questions. Pike demanded order. And through it all, June stood calm as a desert morning, letting the truth sink in like rain on parched earth. Enough! Crow's gavel cracked like a gunshot. This changes nothing regarding territorial authority. Another gunshot reel this time shattered the window behind Crow's head. Women screamed. Men dove for cover. June found herself pulled down behind the witness stand, Cole's body shielding hers. Just a warning shot, someone called from outside. Reminder that law and order means following the judge's decisions. The coyote spurs inside smiled like wolves, but didn't draw. They didn't need to. The message was clear. Anyone else want to question territorial authority? Crow asked the cowering crowd. I do. Deputy Tom Harlan stepped forward, badge catching the late sun through the broken window. Young he might be, but his voice carried steady as a church bell. I took an oath to uphold the law, real law, not whatever this is. He looked at the coyote's spurs. You boys want to shoot someone for speaking truth. You'll have to shoot a deputy first. The silence stretched taut as fence wire. June saw Cole's hand hovering near his pistol, Jonah positioned by the door, even Maria gripping her medical bag like a weapon. The whole room balanced on a knife's edge. Finally, Crow forced a laugh. No one's shooting anyone. Deputy. We're all civilized here. However, given the disruption, I'm postponing final ruling for 1 week. All parties will have time to prepare proper documentation. His smile was pure menace, and to consider the wisdom of cooperation versus conflict. The crowd filed out slowly, like cattle sensing wolves but not sure where they lurked. June gathered her ledgers, hands trembling slightly now that the immediate danger had passed. That was brave, Cole said quietly. Also dangerous. Story of my life, apparently. She managed a shaky smile. Did we accomplish anything? You put doubt in their minds. That's something. Outside, sunset painted Dry Gulch the color of fresh blood. The coyote spurs lounged against the courthouse wall, making everyone walk around them. June recognized the intimidation tactic she'd seen it in Missouri, before everything went wrong. Miss Hart. Pike materialized beside her like smoke. Impressive performance. You've made things, complicated. I've made things clear. Have you? He produced a paper from his coat. This came by wire from Missouri. Seems there are still questions about those missing funds. Questions that could be raised again in a less forgiving jurisdiction. June's blood chilled, but she kept her chin high. We both know those charges were false. What we know and what can be proved in court are different things. However, I'm willing to ensure this document disappears, permanently. All I need is your cooperation in clarifying that your mathematical interpretations today were perhaps overzealous. You want me to lie? I want you to survive. This is a hard land, Miss Hart. Accidents happen. People disappear. Sometimes they're found in mine shafts. Sometimes they're not found at all. Cole's voice cut through the threat like a blade. Problem here, Pike. The lawyer stepped back smoothly, just offering Miss Hart some friendly advice. She's got all the friends she needs. Jonah had appeared on June's other side, Maria behind him. Even Deputy Harlan drifted closer, hand casual on his sidearm. Pike's smile never wavered. How touching. The cavalry arrives. Very well. 1 week, Miss Hart. Consider carefully what story you want to tell. He sauntered off, leaving June surrounded by her unlikely guard. The solidarity warmed her more than she could express. I've got a room at the boarding house, Tom Harlan said quietly. Right next to yours. Anyone tries anything tonight, they'll have to go through me. And us, Sister Agnes announced, appearing with several sturdy nuns. We'll be taking shifts at the boarding house tonight. Amazing how much praying we suddenly need to do. June blinked back sudden tears. After Missouri, where everyone had turned away, this fierce protection overwhelmed her. Thank you, all of you. Don't thank us yet, Cole said grimly. We've got a week to build a case that can't be intimidated or shot at. June, what else do you need? She thought quickly. Access to territorial records in Prescott, banking documents, property transfer histories going back at least 5 years. I'll ride out tonight. Jonah volunteered. Can make Prescott by tomorrow afternoon. I'll wire contacts in Tucson, Maria added. My husband had friends in government. They remember. And I'll have a talk with the other deputies, Tom said. Some of them are getting mighty uncomfortable with how things are running. As plans formed and solidified, June felt something shift in the cooling air. This wasn't just about Riverbend anymore, or even about her own redemption. This was about a community deciding what it would accept, what it would fight for, who it would become. Walking back to the boarding house, surrounded by friends when had that happened, June allowed herself a moment of hope. Crow had given them a week, thinking time favored his intimidation. But June knew better. Time favored truth, if you knew how to use it. She had 7 days to prove that mathematics could triumph over muscle, that ledgers could defeat lies. In her room that night, with Tom Harlan's boots creaking on patrol next door and Sister Agnes's prayers floating up from below, June spread out her papers and got to work. The courthouse bullet hole would be patched tomorrow. The blood-colored sunset would fade to darkness, but the numbers would remain. Steady, true, waiting to tell their story to anyone brave enough to listen. Part 4. Fireline Night. The lightning came without rain, as it often did in Arizona, God's own matchstick striking the earth. June saw the flash from her window at Riverbend, where she'd been working late on property records. The thunder followed, and then worse, the orange glow on the eastern horizon.
Fire!
Cole's shout rang across the ranch yard.
Grass fire moving fast!
June ran outside to find organized chaos. Jonah was already hitching horses to the water wagon while Maria gathered wet blankets and medical supplies. Ranch hands appeared from the bunkhouse, pulling on boots and grabbing tools. Wind's pushing it straight for us. Cole assessed grimly. We've got maybe an hour before it hits the east pasture. What do you need me to do? June asked. He looked at her dress. City boots. Soft hands, and she saw him weighing protection against need. I can help, she insisted. Tell me how. Water brigade. We'll set up a relay from the well to the fire line. Can you handle that? She nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. The next hour blurred into smoke and sweat. June found her place in the human chain passing buckets. Her hands soon blistered from the rope handles. The fire moved like a living thing, consuming the drought-dry grass with terrifying hunger. Switch to digging, Cole ordered as the flames drew closer. We need a fire break 10 feet wide. Nothing burnable. June grabbed a shovel, attacking the earth alongside cowboys and townspeople who'd seen the glow and come to help. Her shoulders screamed, her lungs burned from smoke, but she kept digging. Beside her, Sister Agnes worked with surprising strength, habit tucked up and face streaked with soot. Pray while you dig, the nun advised. Can't hurt. The fire hit their line just as the wind shifted. For a moment, June thought they'd lost flames leap the first section of their fire break, catching the grass beyond. Then Tom Harland appeared with more men from town, attacking the breakaway fire with wet blankets and shovels.
Hold the line,
Cole's voice carried over the roar.
Don't let it jump.
They fought through the night, sometimes winning ground, sometimes losing it. June lost track of time, of self, of everything but the rhythm of work and the shared determination of the people around her. When Maria pressed a water canteen into her hands, she drank without stopping her shoveling. The wind shifted again near dawn, and suddenly they were winning. The fire, robbed of fuel by their firebreak and beaten back by their efforts, began to consume itself. As the sun rose, they stood looking at a blackened landscape, hundreds of acres of pasture gone, but the ranch buildings safe. "We held," Jonah said wonderingly. "We actually held." Cole surveyed the damage with the stoic acceptance of a man who'd faced setbacks before. "Lost about 300 acres of graze. Could have been worse." "Could have been everything," June corrected, swaying slightly on her feet. Cole steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "You should rest. You've been going all night."
"We all have. Come on."
He guided her toward the wagon they'd used as a water station, now serving as makeshift medical post. "Let Maria look at those hands." June sat on the wagon bed while Maria cleaned and wrapped her blisters. Around them, the firefighters collapsed wherever they stood, exhaustion hitting as adrenaline faded. Someone passed around water and cold biscuits. Someone else started a pot of coffee on a cook fire, ironic after fighting fire all night. "You did good," Cole said, sitting beside her. His face was black with soot, except where sweat had carved channels. "Most folks would have headed for safety. Most folks don't have as much invested in this place as I do." The words hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Cole studied her with those winter sky eyes, seeing past the soot and exhaustion to something deeper. "June, I know what you're going to say." She looked at her bandaged hands. "That I should be careful. That getting attached to lost causes is dangerous. That—" "I was going to say thank you." His voice was soft as smoke.
"For fighting for us. With us."
She looked up, caught by something in his tone. The morning sun slanted across his face, illuminating exhaustion and something else of vulnerability he rarely showed. "This place," he continued, "it's not just land to me. It's my father's dream, my mother's grave, every sunrise I've watched and every storm I've weathered. Watching it burn." He shook his head. "But watching people fight to save it. People who didn't have to care, that means something." June forgot her blisters, forgot the audience of exhausted firefighters, forgot everything but the man beside her and the truth burning between them like the fire they'd just conquered. "I care," she said simply. "I know." He reached out, thumb brushing a smudge of soot from her cheek. "That terrifies me more than any fire." The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass. Then Maria called for help with a burned ranch hand, and the spell broke. But something had shifted in that dawn light, acknowledged if not acted upon. The day brought assessment and planning. The fire had destroyed feed they'd need for winter, weakened their position for the coming legal battle. Pike would use this. Claim River Bend couldn't sustain itself. "We'll manage," Cole said as they surveyed the damage. "Always have." But June heard the worry beneath his confidence. She was calculating too lost revenue, replacement costs, the mathematical reality of survival. That evening, exhausted workers gathered in the ranch kitchen for a meal cobbled together from donations. Neighbors had brought food. Knowing the ranch's resources were strained, the mood was somber despite their victory over the flames. "At least Crow can't requisition burned land," someone joked weakly. "He'll try," another answered. "Claim we can't maintain it properly." June pushed beans around her plate. Mind working. There had to be an angle, a way to turn disaster to advantage. "Maps," she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. We need new survey maps showing the fire damage. Official ones. She turned to Maria. Your husband's surveying equipment, do you still have it? See, but if we can document exactly what burned, file it with the territorial office before Crow files his requisition, we establish current condition. He can't claim we're failing to maintain land that's already documented as burned. Plus, Tom Harland added, catching on. Fire damage is considered act of God under territorial law. Provides 90-day grace period on any property actions. Hope kindled in tired faces. Cole squeezed June's shoulder. Brilliant. They planned late into the night, exhaustion forgotten in the face of possibility. June would prepare the documentation. Maria would do the surveying. Tom would ensure proper filing. They'd steal a march on Crow, use his own weapons against him. Finally, as the others bedded down in various corners of the ranch, June found herself alone with Cole on the porch. The air still tasted of smoke, and the eastern horizon showed black instead of grass gold. You should sleep, he said. Long day tomorrow. Can't, mine's too busy. He understood that she could see it in his smile. They sat in companionable silence, watching stars appear above the smoke haze. June, he said eventually. Earlier, in the wagon. I know. She kept her eyes on the stars. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong everything. Is it? She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. After this is over, he said carefully. After Crow and trials and whatever else would it be wrong then? Her heart hammered against her ribs. Cole! I'm not asking for anything now. Just wondering if there might be a later. June thought of Missouri, of trust betrayed and reputation destroyed. Then she thought of this man beside her, who'd given her purpose and protection without asking anything in return, who'd trusted her with his legacy and his people. Yes, she whispered. There might be a later. He nodded, satisfied. Then we'd better make sure we win. They sat together as the night deepened, not touching but aware of each other with every breath. Tomorrow would bring new battles' documentation to file, cases to build, enemies to outmaneuver. But tonight, with the smell of conquered fire in the air and the promise of later between them, June felt something she hadn't experienced since Missouri. Hope. The wagon that had served as their water station sat nearby. Ordinary and somehow sacred, the place where connection had sparked between them like lightning in dry grass. But unlike the destructive fire they'd fought, this spark promised warmth, not devastation. Get some rest, Cole finally said, standing. I'll take first watch. Watch for what? His smile was grim. Fires don't always start by accident. The implication chilled her, but as June made her way to her room, she felt protected rather than threatened. This ranch, these people, they'd claimed her as surely as she'd claimed them. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The fire had taken grassland, but given something in return, proof that when threatened, they'd stand as one. In her room, June looked at her bandaged hands and smiled. Tomorrow she'd turn disaster into advantage, transform ashes into evidence. But tonight, she held close the memory of Cole's eyes in firelight and the promise of possibilities beyond the smoke. Part 5, Black Ledger, Silver Knife. The young man collapsed at the edge of River Bend's cottonwood grove just as the breakfast bell rang. Maria reached him first, her medical instincts overriding everything else. Blood seeped through his shirt, and clutched in his hand was a leather portfolio and a silver knife engraved with the initials B.C. Daniel Morrison. Cole identified grimly. Worked as clerk at the courthouse. The boy's eyes fluttered open, focused on June with desperate urgency. The ledger! Black ledger! Desert bloom! Save your strength, Maria ordered, pressing cloth to his wound. No. He gripped June's wrist with surprising force. Their cleaning house. Everyone who knows. You have to see. He pushed the portfolio toward her. Copies. I made copies. June opened the leather case with trembling hands. Inside were documents that made her bookkeeper's heart race: transfer orders, shadow company registrations, and a meticulously kept black ledger showing money flowing from Desert Bloom Holdings through a maze of shell companies. Desert Bloom has been buying mineral rights, Daniel gasped, separate from land deeds, using foreclosures, judges' rulings. Who stabbed you? Tom Harland asked, having arrived with the morning patrol. Didn't see. Was leaving town. Knew they'd come. His voice faded as Maria worked frantically. June spread the documents on the porch table, her mind racing through the implications. Desert Bloom Holdings. Pike's creation had systematically acquired subsurface rights to properties across the county. The pattern was elegant in its deviousness: burden ranches with fees, force financial distress, then swoop in to buy mineral rights at rock-bottom prices while leaving surface ownership intact but worthless. Look at this, she breathed. They're not after the land itself, they're after what's underneath. Coal, water, maybe even silver deposits. The surface seizures are just for show, to hide the real theft. Cole studied the documents, jaw tightening. And once the railroad comes through, mineral rights become worth fortunes. June traced the money trail with her finger. But here's the beautiful part: they made a mistake. These transfers all go through territorial bank accounts. That makes it federal jurisdiction. Inside, Daniel Morrison's breathing grew weaker despite Maria's efforts. He managed one more coherent moment, pressing the silver knife into June's hand. Crow's personal letter opener, he whispered. Proof I was in his office. By noon, Daniel Morrison was dead, and Riverbend was in siege mode. Cole posted guards while June worked feverishly to understand the full scope of the documents. Each page revealed new layers of corruption bribes to territorial officials, forged signatures on deeds, even plans to reroute the railroad through specific properties. We need to copy everything. June decided. Spread it wide before they realize what Daniel took. I'll help. Sister Agnes appeared with her nuns and an ancient printing press. The Lord's work sometimes requires ink-stained fingers. They set up a production line in the kitchen, June identifying key documents. Sister Agnes operating the press, Maria organizing copies for distribution. Tom Harland stood guard, increasingly troubled by what he was learning about the man he'd served. As afternoon heat built, Cole returned from town with disturbing news. There's a wanted poster up, claims June embezzled funds in Missouri. $50 reward. June's hand stilled on the documents. Here it was, her past weaponized against her just when they were close to exposing the truth. It's a lie, she said quietly. We know that, Cole replied. But others might not. Pike's offering to mediate, make the warrant disappear if we hand over Daniel's documents. The kitchen erupted in outrage, but June held up a hand. Let him come make his offer. I want witnesses. Pike arrived at sunset, immaculate despite the dusty ride. His smile was a serpent's as he surveyed the armed ranch hands. Miss Hart, I hear congratulations are in order. You've become quite the desperado. Missouri to Arizona, leaving a trail of missing money. State your business, Pike, Cole growled. Simple transaction. Pike produced a thick envelope. The warrant for Miss Hart's arrest, and a bonus $500 in cash. In exchange, you give me whatever fantasy young Morrison shared before his unfortunate demise, and Miss Hart leaves the territory tonight. Counteroffer. June stood, Daniel's documents in her hands. You leave the territory tonight, or tomorrow everyone from here to Prescott learns about Desert Bloom Holdings and its interesting mineral rights acquisitions. Pike's smile faltered. You are bluffing. No one would believe a wanted woman. June laid out the papers like playing cards. Bank transfer receipts, deed registrations, your signature on every one. And this, She held up a document that made Pike go pale. Purchase order for mineral rights under River Bend, dated next week. Rather presumptuous, considering the hearing hasn't happened yet. Those are privileged documents. These are copies. The originals are already en route to the federal marshal in Prescott, the territorial governor, and 3 different newspapers. June smiled coldly. You taught me something important, Mr. Pike. Information is power, but only if you share it properly. Pike's composure cracked like dried mud. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Crow has connections. Had connections. Tom Harland corrected. Word came an hour ago. Someone helped Crow escape federal custody. He's running Pike, leaving you holding the bag. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in Pike's eyes. That's impossible. He was secure. Was your name on those documents? June asked innocently. Because his isn't. You're the only signature linking Desert Bloom to the land grabs. Congratulations, Mr. Pike. You've been set up as the perfect scapegoat. The lawyer's face cycled through emotions, disbelief, rage, calculation. Finally, desperation won. What do you want? Full confession, Tom said, producing paper and pen. Names, dates, amounts, everything about the scheme. And in return, you get a running start, Cole said, same as you offered June. Pike's hands shook as he wrote, spilling details about the conspiracy, how Crow identified properties with valuable substrata, how Pike created the legal framework, how the Coyote Spurs enforced compliance. The scope was breathtaking, reaching into government offices and railroad boardrooms. Crow kept records, Pike said as he signed the confession. Hidden in the courthouse, behind the portrait of President Grant, there's a safe. As Pike prepared to flee, June stopped him. The knife! Daniel died bringing us this evidence. What did that knife mean? Pike glanced at the silver letter opener. Crow's vanity piece. He'd use it to seal deals. Said silver cut cleaner than steel. His laugh was bitter. Guess Daniel proved him right. After Pike's hasty departure, they sat in the kitchen processing what they'd learned. The conspiracy was larger than just Dry Gulch. It was a cancer spreading across the territory, with Crow as surgeon and Pike as instrument. But we've got them now, Tom said, with Pike's confession and Daniel's documents. We've got Pike, June corrected. Crow's still out there, and he's got men loyal to him. This isn't over. Maria entered from the parlor where Daniel Morrison's body lay. I've done what I can. He should have proper burial. He'll have more than that, June promised, looking at the young man's sacrifice. He'll have justice. That night, they kept watching shifts. June couldn't sleep, mind churning through financial mazes and legal strategies. She found Cole on the porch, rifle across his knees. Can't sleep either, she asked, settling beside him. Thinking about Morrison, Kid had courage. He had conscience. Sometimes that's the same thing. Cole studied her in the moonlight. That warrant from Missouri. You want to tell me about it? June had dreaded this moment, but he deserved truth. I was bookkeeper for a mining company, found discrepancies the foreman was skimming. When I reported it, he accused me of the theft, had friends in high places, manufactured evidence. I ran rather than hang for his crime. And now Pike's dragging it back up. Men like Pike always find the wounds to press. She met his eyes steadily. If you want me to leave, I want you to stay. His voice was firm as bedrock. We'll face whatever comes. Together. The word hung between them like a promise. June felt the last walls around her heart crumbling like adobe in rain. This man, this place, these people they'd given her what Missouri had stolen. Trust, purpose, home. The hearing's in 2 days, she said, voice thick with emotion. We should focus on that. June. He caught her hand, calloused thumb brushing her knuckles. When this is over. When this is over, she agreed softly. They sat together in the darkness, hands linked, watching stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring new battles documents to file, witnesses to protect, truth to spread like wildfire. But tonight, with Daniel Morrison's sacrifice heavy on their hearts and Desert Bloom's secrets spread before them like a map to victory, they drew strength from each other. The black ledger that had cost a young man's life would become his monument. Every entry would be scrutinized, every transaction exposed, and somewhere in the desert night, Judge Barrett Crow was running, but he couldn't run from the truth Daniel Morrison had died to reveal. Justice might wear a badge or carry a gun in the territories, but sometimes, June reflected, it came in the form of a conscientious clerk with a head for numbers and the courage to do right. The silver knife glinted on the table Crow's vanity, Morrison's vindication, and now their weapon in the fight to come. Part 6, Mesquite Hill Law versus Justice. The crowd gathering on Mesquite Hill looked like a territorial convention. Wagons and horses filled the flat summit as folks from 3 counties converged for what Tom Harland had announced as an open hearing in the interest of public justice. The young deputy had chosen the location carefully neutral ground, visible for miles, impossible to ambush. June stood with her evidence boxes while Cole and Jonah erected a makeshift platform. The morning sun cast long shadows, and in the distance, dust clouds suggested more riders approaching. "Federal judge is 2 hours out," Tom reported. "Judge William Cartwright himself. Seems Daniel Morrison mailed documents to Prescott before he died." Sister Agnes bustled past with an armload of Spanish land grants. "Maria found these in the mission archives, original deeds from the Mexican period, proving continuous ownership of River Bend. They predate any American claim." The nun's discovery was crucial. Spanish and Mexican land grants carried federal protection. Even corrupt judges couldn't easily dismiss them. June added them to her growing arsenal of evidence. By 10 o'clock, Mesquite Hill resembled a frontier courtroom. Ranchers, townspeople, and curious observers formed a natural amphitheater. The absence of walls somehow made the proceedings feel more honest justice under open sky, where everyone could see and hear. "There," someone pointed to a dust cloud approaching from town. The Coyote Spurs rode in formation, surrounding a wagon that carried what remained of the courthouse authority, but no Crow. His escape had left a power vacuum filled by confused clerks and a nervous prosecutor named Wendell. "This is highly irregular," Wendell squeaked as Tom helped him from the wagon. "Legal proceedings require proper venue." "Nothing proper about what's been happening in that courthouse," Tom replied evenly. "This is a citizen's inquiry, legal under territorial statute. You're welcome to observe." June noticed the Coyote Spurs spreading out, hands near weapons, but they were outnumbered 20 to 1 by armed ranchers. The usual intimidation tactics wouldn't work here. She began methodically, laying out the financial trail like dealing cards. Each document built on the last duplicate receipts. Shadow companies, mineral rights mysteriously separated from surface deeds. Mabel Quinn verified signatures with her uncanny memory. Ranchers testified about escalating fees that always preceded seizure notices. "Let's see the Spanish grants," someone called out. Sister Agnes and Maria presented the aged documents with reverence. The crowd pressed closer as June translated the key passages, showing unbroken ownership of River Bend from 1823 forward. "According to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo," June explained, "these grants are protected by federal law. Any attempt to seize them without federal approval is not just illegal, it's an international treaty violation." Murmurs of amazement rippled through the crowd. The Coyote Spurs shifted uneasily as the legal foundation of their intimidation crumbled. Then June played her Ace Pike's confession. Tom read it aloud in his clear voice. Each word a nail in the conspiracy's coffin. Desert Bloom Holdings exposed. The systematic theft of mineral rights revealed. Crow's network of corruption laid bare. "Lies," one of the Coyote Spurs shouted. "Where's Pike to back this up?" "Gone," Tom admitted. But his signature is verified, and we have corroborating evidence.
Including this.
A new voice carried across the hilltop. The crowd parted as a distinguished man in a black suit climbed the platform. Federal Judge William Cartwright had arrived early, and he wasn't alone. 4 federal marshals flanked him. I received interesting mail 3 days ago, Cartwright announced. Documents from a young clerk named Morrison, along with a letter describing systematic corruption in this county. I've spent those days investigating. He produced a sheaf of papers. Mr. Wendell, are you familiar with the penalties for conspiracy to defraud the federal government? The prosecutor went white. I was just following Judge Crow's instructions. Were you also just following instructions when you notarized these forged documents? Cartwright held up papers June recognized from Pike's files. Your signature appears repeatedly on fraudulent transfers. The dam broke. Wendell, seeing the federal marshals and the hostile crowd, began spilling everything: how Crow had corrupted the entire system, how the Coyote Spurs enforced illegal orders, how Desert Bloom was meant to control water and mineral wealth across the territory. Where's Crow now? Cartwright demanded. I don't know. He escaped 2 nights ago. Said he had friends in Mexico. One of the Coyote Spurs made a fatal mistake, whether from nerves or loyalty to his fled boss. He reached for his gun. The movement triggered instant response. 50 rifles swung toward him. But it was Jonah who acted decisively, his own weapon clearing leather with lightning speed. Don't, Jonah advised quietly. Drop the iron. The man complied, and tension eased fractionally. Tom and the federal marshals quickly disarmed the rest of the Coyote Spurs. Judge Cartwright raised his hands for silence. By federal authority, I hereby void all property transfers, seizures, and requisitions issued by this county in the last 18 months. All administrative fees collected under color of law will be returned. The Desert Bloom Holdings is dissolved. Its assets forfeit to victims of the fraud. The crowd erupted. Men threw hats in the air. Women embraced. And June found herself lifted off her feet by Cole's embrace before propriety reasserted itself. Furthermore, Cartwright continued as order returned. Arrest warrants are issued for Barrett Crow and all conspirators. The federal government will oversee county operations until honest elections can be held. What about the mineral rights? Someone called. June stepped forward. Your Honor, we've prepared a proposal. Community trust to manage mineral resources, with profits shared among legitimate landowners. The legal framework is sound. Show me, Cartwright said. For the next hour, June presented her vision: a cooperative that would prevent future exploitation while ensuring fair development. The judge asked pointed questions, but her preparation was thorough. The numbers worked, the law supported it. Remarkable. Cartwright finally said, You've essentially designed a new model for resource management. I'll recommend it to the territorial governor. As the sun reached its zenith, the impromptu court concluded. The Coyote Spurs were led away in chains. Documents were signed, making the reversals official. Democracy had bloomed on a hilltop, raw and real as desert sage. During the celebratory chaos, June noticed movement on the eastern ridge. A lone rider sat watching too far to identify, but something in the posture suggested Barrett Crow taking one last look at his crumbled empire. Then the figure turned and vanished into the wasteland. Let him go, Cole said, following her gaze. He's finished here. Men like Crow are never finished. They just find new territories to exploit. Then we'd better spread word about what happened here. Make it harder for him next time. Judge Cartwright approached them as the crowd began dispersing. Miss Hart, I'll need you in Prescott to formalize these proposals. Your work here has been extraordinary. I had help, June said, gesturing to her allies, Cole steady beside her. Maria and Sister Agnes organizing medical aid for miners who'd been injured by Coyote Spurs. Tom Harland already planning honest elections. Jonah keeping watch even in victory. Indeed, Cartwright smiled. Mr. McRae, you're fortunate in your bookkeeper. I know, Cole replied quietly, his hand finding June's. As wagons began the journey down Mesquite Hill, June looked back at the impromptu courtroom. In a few hours, they'd overturned months of corruption, restored faith in law, and created a template for community justice.
You did it.
Tom marveled.
You actually beat them with their own weapons.
We did it, June corrected. And we're not done. This was just the beginning. We have a community to rebuild, systems to establish, trust to maintain. Sounds like a lot of work, Cole observed. Sounds like a future, June replied. The federal marshals had commandeered the Coyote Spurs horses, loading evidence for transport to Prescott. Among the seized items was Crow's silver letter opener, Daniel Morrison's final gift to justice. That goes to Morrison's family, June instructed, along with a full account of his heroism. As they descended the hill, June felt the weight of victory settling on her shoulders. They'd won this battle, but the war for honest governance would continue. There would be new Crows, new Pikes, new attempts to steal what others had built. But there would also be people willing to stand on hills and demand justice. People who understood that sometimes law needed to be dragged into the light, examined by common folk, and held accountable to higher principles. The sun was beginning its western descent as the procession reached level ground. June looked up at Cole, seeing in his weathered face the promise of all their tomorrows. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Home. River Bend. The place she'd fought for, nearly died for, finally won for. "Yes," she said simply. "Let's go home." Behind them, Mesquite Hill stood empty but somehow transformed. A place where democracy had proven stronger than corruption, where ledgers had defeated guns, where community had trumped conspiracy. The shadows were lengthening as they rode toward River Bend, but June had never seen the path more clearly. They had work ahead building the trust, establishing the cooperatives, ensuring this victory lasted. But for now, she rode beside the man she loved toward the home they'd saved, carrying in her saddlebags the plans for a more just tomorrow. Justice had won on Mesquite Hill. Now came the harder task, making it last. Part 7, Late Rain. Open Doors. The rain came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Mesquite Hill. June woke to the sound of it drumming on the roof, not the violent thunderstorms that brought flash floods, but steady, soaking rain that the desert drank like a blessing. She found Cole on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the transformation. The burned grassland was already showing green shoots, and the air smelled of wet sage and possibility. "Beautiful," she said, joining him. "The land or the rain?" "Both. All of it." She accepted the cup he offered. "The cooperative meeting is this afternoon." "I know. Still think you should run for president of it?" June shook her head. "I'm better with numbers than politics. Besides, I have other plans." The Dry Gulch Cooperative had been her idea, but it belonged to everyone now. In the weeks since Crow's fall, the community had embraced the concept with enthusiasm. Shared water rights, collective bargaining for supplies, mutual support during hard times. It was frontier socialism tempered by practical experience. "Tom stopped by earlier," Cole said. "The federal appointment came through. He's officially Marshal Harlan now." "Good. We need honest law." They stood together, comfortable in shared silence, watching River Bend come alive in the rain. Ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse, laughing as they set out barrels to catch water. Maria appeared in the kitchen garden, checking her herbs with satisfaction. "June," Cole began, then stopped. She waited, knowing he'd find the words when ready. Cole McRae didn't speak carelessly. "I've been thinking about the future. The ranch is stable now. Cooperatives forming, towns getting honest leadership." He turned to face her. "Seems like we've run out of excuses." June's heart accelerated. "Excuses for what?" From his pocket, He produced a silver ring, not fancy, but crafted with care. She recognized the silver from the creek that ran through River Bend, the same creek that had helped prove their water rights.
"I'm not good with speeches," he said, "but I know what I want. Question is, do you—"
June set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. "Cole McRae, are you proposing—" "Badly, apparently." A smile cracked his serious expression. "Let me try again. June Hart, you've saved my land, my life, and my faith in justice. Would you consider making it permanent?" She thought of all the reasons to say no her past. The impropriety of a woman bookkeeper marrying her employer, the 1,000 things that could go wrong. Then she looked at this man who'd given her trust when everyone else offered suspicion, who'd stood beside her against corruption and flame alike. "Yes," she said simply, "but I have conditions." His eyebrow raised.
"Negotiations should have expected that from a bookkeeper."
"I keep working. The school needs teachers. The cooperative needs managers. I won't be just a rancher's wife."
"Wouldn't want you to be—"
"And we're partners, full partners, in everything. Already are, far as I'm concerned." "Then yes." She held out her hand for the ring. "Absolutely yes." He slipped it on her finger, then kissed her as the rain fell around them. It was different from that desperate moment in the wagon during the fire this was choosing. Deliberate and certain as the book she balanced. "When?" he asked when they parted. "After the school opens, I want the children settled first." The school was June's newest project. With the cooperative established and the town recovering, she'd turned her attention to education. Too many children in Dry Gulch couldn't read contracts or calculate interest. She intended to change that. That afternoon, the cooperative meeting filled the town hall. Ranchers who'd once viewed each other as competition now discussed shared resources. The railroad representatives, chastened by federal oversight, offered fair contracts for water and freight. Motion to establish a community water trust. June read from her prepared notes. All members contribute to maintenance. All share access based on acreage.
"What about drought years?" someone asked.
Proportional reduction. Everyone takes the same percentage cut. And surplus years. Bank it, literally. She showed her calculations. 10% of surplus revenue goes to reserve fund. Within 5 years, we'll have enough to weather any drought. The vote was unanimous. As she recorded the decision, June felt Cole's proud gaze from across the room. This was what victory looked like, not dramatic courtroom confrontations, but neighbors choosing cooperation over competition. Tom Marshall Harland now spoke next about establishing a citizens' review board for legal matters. Sister Agnes proposed a medical fund. Maria suggested botanical surveys to prevent overgrazing. Democracy, June thought, was messier than autocracy but infinitely more durable. After the meeting, unexpected visitors arrived, railroad executives from the Southern Pacific, come to negotiate in good faith after word of Mesquite Hill reached their boardrooms. "Miss Hart," the lead negotiator said, "we've heard about your innovative proposals. We're prepared to offer favorable terms for rail access, including hiring preferences for locals and land restoration guarantees." June reviewed their contracts with the same meticulous attention she'd once applied to exposing fraud. This time, the numbers were honest, the terms fair. "We'll need community approval," she said, "but this looks promising." As evening fell, the rain continued. The town felt washed clean not just of dust, but of the corruption that had stained it. At the Dusty Rose, Mabel Quinn held court, retelling the Mesquite Hill triumph to travelers. Her new establishment, the Silver Dollar Inn, would open next month with June's help on the books. "Heard congratulations are in order," Mabel said when June stopped by. Cole finally worked up the nerve. News traveled fast in Dry Gulch. "This morning." "About time. That man's been mooning over you since you corrected Wheeler's arithmetic." Mabel poured 2 whiskeys. "To new beginnings." They toasted as rain pattered against windows. Through the glass, June could see the town transforming new construction. Fresh paint, people walking without fear of coyote spurs. "We did good," Mabel said softly. "Took down a judge, saved the valley, gave folks hope." "We're not done," June replied. "This was just the foundation." She spent the evening at Sister Agnes's boarding house, working on curriculum for the school, basic arithmetic, contract reading, water rights, practical education for frontier life. Several mothers had already volunteered to help teach. "You'll make a good teacher," Sister Agnes observed. "Though I suspect you'll have your hands full soon enough with pupils of your own." June blushed. "One thing at a time, sister." "Indeed, though time has a way of compressing out here. Desert teaches you to grab happiness when it appears, like rain." Later, Cole found her there, hat dripping from the ongoing downpour. "Thought you might need a ride home." Home. River Bend had become that without her noticing, the transition as gradual as entries in a ledger. They rode through the rain-softened darkness, June secure in the circle of his arms. The desert smelled alive creosote and sage releasing their oils, earth accepting water like a lover's embrace. "Tom wants to deputize Jonah," Cole mentioned. "Says he needs good men for the new order." "Jonah would be perfect, fair, steady, impossible to corrupt." "My thoughts exactly, though we'll miss him at the ranch." "We'll find others. Good people want to be part of something growing." They reached River Bend as the rain began tapering to drizzle. The ranch looked different in the wet, softer somehow. Edges blurred like watercolors. June could envision the future overlaid on the present children playing in the yard. Expanded buildings for the growing operation. Perhaps a library where the old tack room stood. "Regrets?" Cole asked, helping her down from the horse. "About what?" "Coming here, getting tangled in our troubles. You could have had an easier life elsewhere." June turned in his arms, rain damp and certain. "I could have had a different life. Not better, not easier, just less." He kissed her then, and she tasted rain and promise and the peculiar sweetness of hard-won victory. When they parted, the clouds were breaking, stars peeking through like scattered coins. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. "Let's get dry. Tomorrow we have a water trust to establish, a school to build, and a community to grow. And a wedding to plan," he added. "That too." She smiled, feeling the silver ring solid on her finger. "Though I warn you, I intend to revolutionize wedding contracts too. Equal partnership means equal everything." His laughter followed them into the house, where Maria waited with hot soup and knowing smiles. Outside, the rain had stopped, but its gift remained moisture soaking deep into the earth, promising growth, washing the past clean for whatever came next. The black ledgers of corruption had been balanced. Now it was time to write new ones, filled with hopes rather than theft, community instead of conspiracy. June Hart's soon-to-be McRae looked forward to every entry. Part 8, Silver Ring in Red Dust. The wedding took place beneath the ancient cottonwood, its branches dressed with autumn gold. June wore her mother's dress, altered by Maria's skilled hands, while Cole stood waiting in his father's suit. Silver ring catching the morning light. Half the territory seemed to have gathered at River Bend. Sister Agnes officiated with practical warmth. Tom Harlan stood as Cole's best man, and Jonah, now Deputy Reed, kept gentle order among the crowd. Even Mabel Quinn had closed the Silver Dollar Inn for the occasion, declaring love more important than profit. "Dearly beloved," Sister Agnes began, "we gather to witness something rare in this hard land, two people choosing to bind their lives not from necessity or convention, but from love and respect." June caught Cole's eye, remembering their first meeting in Wheeler's store. Who could have predicted that correcting arithmetic would lead to this moment? "The couple has written their own vows," Sister Agnes continued. "Because of course they have." June pulled out a small paper, not romantic poetry, but something truer. Cole McRae, you gave me trust when I had only suspicion. You offered partnership when others saw property. I promised to balance our books and our lives with equal dedication, to stand beside you through drought and plenty, through legal battles and cattle drives, to be your partner in all things, holding nothing back, building something greater than either of us could manage alone. Cole's eyes glistened as he spoke his own vows without paper. June Hart, you saved more than my ranch. You saved my faith that right could triumph over might. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine, to remember that your strength is our strength, to build a life where our children will learn that justice and courage can wear a dress as easily as spurs. The rings, Sister Agnes prompted. They exchanged the silver bands his crafted to match hers, both born from River Bend's own earth. As Sister Agnes pronounced them married, a light rain began to fall, a blessing in the desert, turning the dust to rich earth smell. The celebration spread across the ranch. Tables groaned under the weight of community offering. The school children June had been teaching performed a song about numbers adding up to love, which made everyone laugh and June cry. Musicians struck up dancing as the afternoon wore on, and even proper Sister Agnes was seen stepping lively with Marshal Harland. As evening approached, June found herself at the table that had once held desperate strategy sessions, now covered with wedding gifts and well-wishes. The transformation struck her from siege mentality to celebration, from suspicion to community. Happy? Cole asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of punch. Overwhelmed, she admitted. 6 months ago, I was a runaway bookkeeper with a carpet bag. Now you're a revolutionary disguised as a rancher's wife. She laughed. Is that what I am? Among other things, teacher, cooperative founder, pain in corrupt judges' necks. He grew serious. The woman who made me believe in tomorrow again. Before she could respond, Maria approached with news. The evening stage brought mail from the territorial capital. June opened the official envelope, scanned its contents, then read aloud, "The Arizona Territorial Legislature hereby approves the Dry Gulch Community Trust model for adoption territory-wide. Your innovative approach to resource management will serve as template for fair development throughout Arizona." Cheers erupted. What had begun as desperate defense against corruption was now official policy. Their local victory had become territorial transformation. "There's more," Maria said quietly. "A letter from Missouri." June's celebration dimmed. But the letter, when opened, brought unexpected grace. Miss Hart. Subsequent investigation has revealed the full extent of Harold Morrison's embezzlement. Your name is cleared of all suspicion. The company board extends apologies and offers you position of chief accountant should you wish to return. Signed, James Whitfield, President. "Will you go back?" someone asked. June looked around at Cole, steady and sure beside her, at the ranch that had become home, at the community that had fought beside her, at the desert wearing its brief green coat of rain-fed growth. "Go back to what?" she asked. "Everything I want is here." As night fell, lanterns bloomed like fireflies across River Bend. The newlyweds sat on their porch now watching the celebration continue. Children chased between tables. Couples danced to fiddle music, and stories of the Mesquite Hill victory grew with each telling. "The school opens next week," June mused. 23 students enrolled so far. The Water Trust meets Thursday. Cole added, "Railroad crew arrives Monday to start the spur line. The cooperative's first cattle drive is next month." They smiled at each other even on their wedding day, planning and building. Some things didn't change. "No regrets?" Cole asked, echoing his question from weeks before. June twisted her silver ring, thinking of all the paths that had led to this moment, the false accusation in Missouri that had driven her west, the courage of Daniel Morrison, whose sacrifice had exposed the truth, the community that had chosen justice over easy corruption. How can I regret the road that brought me home? Inside the house, She could see their future taking shape, the study where both sets of ledgers would live in harmony, the empty rooms that would someday hold children who'd grow up knowing their worth wasn't measured only in cattle or coins, but in integrity and community. Storm coming, Cole observed, watching clouds build on the horizon. We've weathered worse. That we have. They sat in comfortable silence as the celebration gradually wound down. Families loaded into wagons, calling out final congratulations. Jonah organized the cleanup with military efficiency. Sister Agnes blessed various departing groups with practical advice disguised as spiritual guidance. When the last wagon rolled away, June and Cole walked through their domain. The ranch spread before them in moonlight, the corrals sturdy with new repairs, the windmill turning steady, the house waiting with lamplight warmth. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked. "About ledgers," June admitted. "How every entry affects the balance, how small numbers accumulate into large ones, how truth, properly documented, can topple lies no matter how entrenched. You're thinking about revolution on our wedding night. I'm thinking about legacy. What we're building here, it's bigger than us. The cooperative, the school, the water trust, they'll outlast us. Children we haven't even had yet will inherit a different world because we chose to fight." Cole pulled her close. "Then we'd better get started on those children." She laughed, letting him lead her inside, but at the threshold, she paused for one last look at the desert night. Somewhere out there, Barrett Crow might still be running. Other corrupt judges definitely still held power. The fight for justice never truly ended. But tonight, in this place, with these people, they had carved out something precious, a community that knew its own worth, that had tools to defend itself, that would teach its children to read both books and contracts with equal skill. The silver ring caught moonlight as June closed the door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new ledgers to balance, new battles to fight, but tonight was for celebrating victories won and partnerships forged. In the bedroom, Cole had lit candles that cast dancing shadows on adobe walls. The space that had once held only his solitary existence now welcomed their shared future. As June stepped into his embrace, she thought of that desperate moment in the wagon during the fire, how far they'd traveled from that raw need to this chosen certainty. "I love you," she said simply. "Partner." "I love you back," he replied, revolutionary. Outside, desert rain began to fall again, gentle, steady, patient as time. It would soak deep into the earth, feeding seeds that would bloom in their season. The sound followed them into their private world, a blessing on all they'd built and all they'd build together. The lamplight dimmed, the candles flickered, and two souls who'd found each other across miles and troubles settled into their first night as one. In the morning, there would be ledgers to balance and communities to build. But for now, there was only this, the quiet triumph of love in a land that tested everything but rewarded courage with permanence. River Bend Ranch stood solid under stars and rain. No longer just Cole's inheritance or June's refuge, but their shared foundation. From it would grow things neither could have imagined when a dusty stagecoach first deposited a runaway bookkeeper in Dry Gulch, children who'd know justice as birthright, institutions that served rather than stole, and the proof that sometimes the pen truly was mightier than the sword. The desert had taught them both its hardest lesson, that what blooms briefly can seed eternity, if you know how to tend it. And June Hart McRae, bookkeeper turned revolutionary turned wife, knew exactly how to make things grow. Thank you for joining me on this wild journey through the Arizona territory. I hope June and Cole's story touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening to this tale tonight? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know if you're by a cozy fireplace, on a long drive, or perhaps even somewhere out in the wide open spaces of the American West. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more tales of courage, love, and justice from the frontier. Hit that like button if June's journey inspired you. And don't forget to press the hype button to help this story reach more listeners who love the romance and adventure of the Old West. Until next time, Partners, keep your ledgers balanced and your hearts open.